Welcome back to Pop Tabs, keeping tabs on all your pop culture news. I'm your host, Matthew Yapp, and joining me today is...
Phil Akin.
And...
Michael Robb.
Michael, you haven't been here in so long.
I haven't. It's good to be back, though.
My old video editor and my current one. You guys are so good. You know it's not really that good? Fortnite, apparently. Because the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, has recently said at a YMC charity event that he thinks that Fortnite shouldn't be allowed. He said, "Where is the benefit of having it in your household? It's created an addiction to keep you in front of a computer as long as possible." Later calling video games and social media more addictive than drugs. So, right away, what are our thoughts on that one, gang?
Well, I think, with alcohol and drugs and all that, definitely it's been shown they are addictive substances if you don't use it in moderation. And him calling for a ban of video games because it can just, exhibit or cause similar things to happen to you.
Right.
I think an outright ban has never worked for anything. If we look at historically prohibition, got rid of alcohol completely. People did it anyway, and then it was underground, and then eventually that got revoked.
Yeah.
So I think him saying it shouldn't be there's no place for Fortnite, there's no place for video games. He didn't say video games, but I have a feeling based on the article
where this is going. Yes.
Where he is going is Fortnite is just the most popular thing right now, and so I think that was a blanket statement for video games in general. I think an outright ban of anything usually doesn't accomplish necessarily what you want to do. I'm sure there's exceptions to that, but I think in terms of...
Well, I mean, even Prohibition actually worked exactly the way they wanted it to. The drinking and driving went down significantly. Domestic abuse dropped pretty significantly in the country. The main goals that Prohibition was trying to get to, sure, people didn't stop drinking, but that really wasn't what they were going for. They were going for drinking-related crimes, and all of those things did drop significantly. So banning alcohol actually did work really well for what they were going for.
That's a good point, Matthew.
Yeah.
Okay, but what gaming-related crimes are being committed right now?
Crimes, not so much.
Besides little kids taking their parents'
card,
credit cards or something like that, I don't see a huge crime that's happening right now.
But there are definitely a lot of health-related things. In fact, the World Health Organization has come out and said that gaming disorder, as they phrased it, is a very real addictive kind of disease, and that it does have a lot of major downsides from anything from obesity, anxiety, insomnia. So it does have quite a bit of negative effect.
Yeah, I understand what Prince Harry is going for here, but I don't think, like Michael said, an outright ban is the way to go. Because anything can be an addiction. Mm-hmm. Fast food's an addiction, but I don't see them banning McDonald's every single place.
I mean, fast food we say is an addiction, but the World Health Organization hasn't said so.
Well,
that's true, but they did just recently say or classify gaming disorder. Mm-hmm. So that's not to say that just because they haven't said it yet doesn't mean that it's not an actual problem.
No, but we can't act on things that haven't been declared yet.
That's very true.
Mm-hmm.
That's very true.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really interesting the timing of that declaration. It was fairly recently, wasn't it, that gaming disorders were classified as that, and then now we have people calling more and more for change in that way. Although there's always been pushback from video games. Video games have been used as a scapegoat for a lot of different things, and so definitely a lot of the reaction to him coming out and saying we need to ban Fortnite. There's no place for it. A lot of people have been look, just another old man shaking his fist at the sky. I think is how you wrote it in the outline. And that's absolutely true. But that doesn't mean that what he's saying doesn't have some merit to it. I think the exact quote that he said was, Fortnite, it's created to addict, and an addiction to keep you in front of the computer for as long as possible. Mm-hmm. And definitely the model that is used in Fortnite, it's a free game, so anyone can grab it, and so you get that first taste, and then everything else is designed to play one more game, and then you get these many tokens, or I don't play Fortnite, so I don't know the exact words for it, but everything is there's microtransactions and everything else. That's their whole revenue model. So it's all about keeping people engaged so that they spend money, hopefully, and then keep you in front of that and just play one more game, and
Yeah, and I think that is the issue, is like you said, it's set up to be addictive. And so we have something that has been declared by the World Health Organization as addictive. It's made to be addictive, and at the end of the day, it's kind of been made to take your money, yet we have zero regulation on that. Why do you think that is?
Well, video games are self-regulated, but not regulated by the government, at least here in America, because of the whole ESRB rating and everything, and that's done to keep the government out of regulating games as much as possible.
Right.
So I don't think, he's saying you should outright ban them all. I think, if anything, there should be kind of maybe more restriction on it as well, because you've already got M-rated games and stuff, so maybe you've got I guess what I'm trying to say is you've got like alcohol in the States is like you can only get it
at a certain age.
So maybe free-to-play games or games like Fortnite that are designed to be addictive can only be played at like 16 or something.
Okay.
I don't know, something like that.
Because I mean, Fortnite does skew to a fairly young audience.
Right. And so I don't think like 10-year-olds should be playing it. I understand that it's kind of like a bright and colorful game, and that I think it's got easy gameplay. It's easy for kids to get into it.
I don't. I'm very bad at it.
Well, that's all right, Matt. But the point kind of is, like, I don't think that they should just outright ban it. I think they should put an age restriction on it, if anything.
Right.
And like I was saying earlier, Fortnite in particular, it is a free-to-play game, and many games, especially mobile games, have that kind of model.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's free to play and download, but if you want a little bit more out of it, or if you want to move faster or whatever, like, you can pay some money and then, support the developers, but also like, you get a benefit out of it, and it like keeps that wheel rolling of like just one more game. And so maybe the issue isn't necessarily like with the ESRB, that's an age restriction. Like this game is like rated mature, so people this age and up should play, or this one's rated teen. So maybe what needs to be looked at isn't necessarily the age of people playing, but how or what kind of like psychological stuff is being put into the game itself.
Well, I mean, kind of going off that, something that we've seen a lot recently is regulations on loot boxes, with certain states outright banning the use of loot boxes in games. Some countries literally suing game companies for this kind of addictive gambling-esque idea. And so, I mean, at that point, we're banning things, we're changing dynamics. At what point is there a line of like, how much are we really stifling people creating these games, or how much are we just trying to be healthy? What do you think on that?
Well, I think, it goes back to, again, like all the stuff that I think is most addictive in Fortnite. Well, yes, the gameplay has to be fun. That's the foundation of it.
Right.
But I think the battle royale genre in and of itself doesn't have to be like unhealthily addicting. I think the revenue model that they have in place, like the microtransaction model, it like leads into that addictive kind of gameplay, and so like,
you're
it creates that
more
cycle.
with microtransactions rather than actually.
Yeah, and there's nothing creative necessarily about microtransactions in the sense of like telling a story or like displaying like an art style. There is creativity, I guess, in how you're manipulating people, but I don't think that's the purpose that a lot of people like game. It's not like to see like how can I be manipulated by this game, like, and no one thinks like that. But so I think restricting kind of how developers can make money from a game, like you make it from like an old-fashioned like purchase. So, you pay this much, you get the game, and then you're done. Or like really adjust how microtransactions are done. And like you said already, loot boxes have already been like looked at closely, and there's been a lot of pushback from it. So taking that maybe a step further to kind of restrict kind of the damage that could potentially be done to people who play it.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I think a lot of this kind of falls on the parents, honestly, when it comes to this kind of stuff. Because I mean, going back to like the ratings, like a parent shouldn't buy their 12-year-old like an M-rated game. So like, I guess if a parent sees that their kid,
I turned out fine.
You're great, Matt. But I mean, I'm serious. Like, if a parent sees that like Fortnite's addictive,
right,
and that their 12-year-old's playing Fortnite, and that like they're getting in trouble, like I don't know, they can't focus in school or something, then maybe the parent shouldn't let the kid play it. Okay. I think it kind of falls on the parent at that point to like restrict it, because they're in charge of like what the kid kind of does.
I feel like that kind of does fall into a bit of like an oversimplification, because it's not just kids. I mean, this is an issue for everyone addicted.
Right.
And so like I feel like that almost falls into like with like alcohol, people are like, well, they should just drink less. Like the problem does lie a bit, or at least in my opinion, with whatever is an addictive substance, rather than completely saying this person is wrong for getting addicted, I guess. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm not saying they're wrong for getting addicted. I'm saying like if it is kids, I think the parents are responsible. If it's an adult, then they're kind of doing it to themselves because they're grown up.
Yeah. Fair enough. So something that you did mention is like people did kind of laugh this off and be like, haha, Prince Harry's an angry old man.
Right.
Why do you think we are at a current place where, I mean, again, they've declared it an addiction, but people don't take it seriously? What do you think that separation is between an addictive substance and video games to people?
So like, why are we so serious about alcohol and drugs,
but not so much about video games?
Video games. Well, I think part of it also kind of goes back to what Phil said. He said, I think what you said was anything can be addicting.
Right.
If anyone can be addicted to anything. Like, there's always, I think, My Strange Addictions is a TV show.
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
And so there's lots of outliers and stuff. So no one's going to ban like if someone like weirdly.
That was an episode.
Yeah. If someone does that, no one's going to be like, well, we need like some restrictions on like automobiles. Like we can't have. Who says automobiles? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was weird. I was going to let it slide.
But anyway, so like, I think when it comes to video games, like you need to like when you look at alcohol, like there's a high correlation between like certain things happen. Like some things are more addictive than others.
Yeah.
Alcohol and drugs definitely, fall into that category of like, having like a lower threshold for you getting to an unhealthy point with that. So you really have to like watch what you're doing. So maybe video games need to be looked at closer, more research needs to be done. But I don't know if that threshold is as low as alcohol and drugs.
Gotcha.
So maybe that's where that comes from. Maybe that's why people don't take it as seriously, is because it's like, well, plenty of people play video games. Everyone plays video games. So at what point do we like decide like,
that's too much.
That's too much. It's hard to, I think.
Right, 'cause I think another part of it is that, and just hear me out on this, drugs and alcohol like have killed way more people and like physically harmed way more people than video games have. So it's weird to put like drugs and alcohol on the same plane as like video games in terms of like what the damage they cause. I know people have died from video games. I know there's a story, I think someone in Japan died because they just
couldn't stop.
They just couldn't stop playing. So that is a very real addiction, but it's also like been newly added as an addiction. So I don't think that there's enough research to show it right now. So people don't take it as seriously because they're like, well, drunk driving is a problem, but like I don't know anyone who plays video games and drives, I guess.
Pokemon Go.
Pokemon Go. Oh yeah, never mind.
There we go, we cracked it.
But no, I kind of look at it as like, I think kind of what you guys are saying is it just seems less harmful, and maybe health-wise there it does line up, but like it's almost the same as like people take weed a lot less seriously than heroin, because like you smoke weed, it's what it is, and like you're probably not going to get addicted, but you take heroin, you're going to die, and you're also addicted right away.
Right.
It's just like there's like such a different threshold.
Right. Well, and also I think video games have always been looked down as like a kid thing.
Yeah.
So versus like alcohol, that's like a very much an adult thing.
Yeah.
So
heroin's super adult.
Heroin is super adult, but video games are, in like society's eye, I think, aren't viewed as adult things.
I agree.
So.
But I think it ultimately does kind of fall back onto kind of what you were saying, is like we expect people to be able to take responsibility more for themselves, like purchasing and playing video games, than we think people can take responsibility for being an alcoholic. I think we look at video games as something more removed. Speaking of removing things, Australia wants to remove social media, kind of. Basically, a new law in Australia has been passed that has the intention of holding social media companies accountable when they host what could be considered violent content. This is in response to the mass shooting in Church Christ in New Zealand a while ago. Basically, just before that mass shooting happened, the criminal who committed it, he posted a very long manifesto that was about white supremacy, and that stayed up online pretty much until a mass shooting happened. And so Australian lawmakers are kind of saying that this a bit of the blame lies with social media companies. And so they are saying now that if a social media company allows violent or hateful content to stay up, employees can be jailed and they will be charged 10% of their annual revenue. So what's our initial thought on this game?
Wow.
Yeah,
so it's a heavier topic.
Yeah,
It definitely is. I don't know that they, I guess it's the government, so I guess they could do it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they really can do it, if that makes sense at all.
No, it does.
I don't think that social media platforms are responsible for what the users post on there. I think they have every right to take it off and remove it if they want to, deem it wrong or something. But I don't think that they are necessarily responsible for what happens on their platform, if that makes sense at all.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. To counter that, though, I suppose social media platforms are giving people a tool to disseminate a lot of information very quickly. And if that information is spreading hate speech and whatever else, they may not be the ones saying it. Facebook isn't saying white supremacy woo.
Yeah.
But people on Facebook are, and Facebook is the tool they are using to spread that kind of that kind of information and that rhetoric. And so, at what point should they step in and be and denounce kind of what's happening? Because at the end of the day, the Facebook logo is above that post.
Yeah.
And so, and even disregarding what that does to a brand, is it ethical for them to, basically just let this happen and be like spread in this way?
Yeah.
And I like, free speech is very important, but at the end of the day, like where's the line?
Yeah.
What do you do?
But I mean, there's like millions of people who use social media, and so like if you take down one fan page that's like made for white supremacy, another one's just gonna pop up, and I feel like it's gonna take a very long time for a social media platform to go through every single post and delete like everything.
I mean, it will, but I don't think we can just leave it.
I don't think you can either, but I'm just saying, like, if you take one down, there's gonna be another one that pops up.
Yeah. Very Hydra.
It is very Hydra. Yeah.
No, the way I kind of look at it is to put it in context of another law. At least in America, Australia is slightly different, but at least in America, I'm 20. Michael, he's 23.
Correct.
Killing it. So if Michael, with me a 20-year-old, since I'm a minor, if Michael were to give me a lot of alcohol and I were to die of alcohol poisoning, Michael gets arrested because Michael provided me with the tool to do that.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I kind of look at this in the exact same way, where yes, I am the one who did that action, but Michael was kind of the platform. We already have this precedent that people are responsible for lending people the tools to commit crimes. I mean, if you give somebody a gun that's not registered to them and they kill someone with it, you also get charged. And so we already have this precedent that tools provided by other people does make the original party guilty. And so that's how I look at this. Facebook is the tool, they're the platform, and so they provide people with these violent posts. So I don't know, I kind of really do look at it as Facebook's kind of responsible, Twitter as well, all that jazz.
Any platform.
Any platform. That being said, something that did come up a bit is, are hateful and violent content, are they really anything to blame for these kind of crimes? I mean, was the guy posting a 20-page manifesto, was that really like a lead into a crime?
I don't know if it was a lead into that specific crime, but I do think it can bring about copycats, and that can be just as damaging. Especially if it's in America where we kind of glorify these types of shooters, which just like in turn makes more copycats and stuff, and makes them like a martyr. So I do think that it can kind of like, it can be a way for other people to look at it and say like, oh, I can do something like that too. So I think that's where the harm lies.
Moving beyond just like white supremacy or anything related to that, like just looking at like the anti-vax movement, those people have always existed. People with those ideas have always existed. People with weird, like outlandish thoughts about how things work, how medicine works. But I think social media has a very, very large part, or played a very large part in the spread of this movement, because suddenly you're giving a platform for those people, and then it spreads, and they can convince more people, and then it just it adds to it. And so like the way in which we can communicate with each other can be like can be hugely beneficial. Like globalization, all of that stuff. But like at the end of the day, you're also giving a platform to people who, like whether it's like something funny like flat earthers, to something that's actually damaging and like hurting people with the anti-vax movement. Like it's
vaccinate your kids. I swear to God.
So like you're giving them a platform at the end of the day, and like it's at some point it is a tool. So what
are you allowing people to use it for?
Like what's the ethical responsibility of a company?
I think the issue, I honestly do think the fact that it comes down to like kind of speech is really muddying the water in the conversation. Because rolling back to 2010 in Europe, basically social media platforms, there was declared like a crisis, because there was this thing going around where more or less kids, teenagers, were being told that, if you like half hang yourself, you will get high from it. And like where there is some truth to that, what ended up happening is a lot of kids would see that online, and a lot of kids were half hanging themselves from like doorknobs and stuff to get high, and that led to a lot of kids accidentally actually hanging themselves. And so there was dozens of cases of kids accidentally killing themselves because of things they saw online. And it was declared a crisis, and social media platforms had to take those all down. And so once again, we have this precedent that it can be an issue and it can be considered a tool, but I think because we're seeing it as a free speech thing, I think it's muddying the water, and people are just almost offended that they're being told they can't say certain things because it's violent. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that being said, tech companies are also starting to complain, saying that this creates a downward slope that makes a precedent of them having to control what their users say, and that it does impede on free speech. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it impedes on free speech when you're using a social media platform. I mean, you sign like the terms and agreements on there, so you give them every right to take down your posts and everything, or just delete what you say anyway. So I don't think when you're using a social media site that you kind of waive your free or your First Amendment. I mean, a little bit there.
Yeah.
It's almost like, like you said, people don't read through the terms and agreements. You don't know what you're agreeing to, but you do. Like it is a privately owned company and a privately owned platform. It just happens to have become so mainstream and integrated into our society and how we communicate with each other that people forget, like, this isn't just like talking to somebody where, like, you can talk to somebody, no one owns that.
Yeah.
Whatever you say on Facebook or Twitter, that's, they can do whatever they want with that.
Exactly.
They could.
Yeah.
So,
People's free speech arguments literally drive me insane, because yes, you can say whatever you want, you just cannot get persecuted from it. You can say whatever you want on Facebook, but free speech does not mean you cannot have that removed. Facebook, like we've said, is a private company. They're allowed to do whatever they want. And I personally think that Facebook and other tech companies being like, I have to stifle people's free speech, I think that is a little, I would say, lazy of them almost. I feel like what they actually don't want to do is they don't want to have to put consequences on their users out of fear of losing a user base. And so they're trying to hide that behind we don't want to impede on free speech, because that's not at all what they're doing.
Right. It's all about profits and making sure that their business is successful. It's just really interesting how that works.
Real quick, an example is Elizabeth Warren posted on Facebook a thing criticizing Facebook, and they took that down just fine. But suddenly we have to take down the white supremacists post, and now it's free speech issue.
It's all about free speech.
Yeah.
And then I think another thing that you noted was that what's the line? How do you decide what's violent and what's not?
Right.
Like, what is it that who's the determiner of that? And I think in the case of when we're talking about social media companies, it's the companies. They ultimately will decide that. But if they're not going to do it because out of fear of losing their user base, then the government might have to step in and like make some laws about that. So I don't know.
I would have said, with who gets to draw the line, I would have said social media companies, but as we've been over, a little cowardly. And so I think since we've gotten to this point where, the alt-right has taken over large sections of Reddit. We see every day on Twitter racist remarks thrown around. We see on Facebook white supremacy manifestos that lead to a shooting come out. I think it's clear that, frankly, social media companies can't handle themselves. And so this is one of those things where in a world with a government, the government does have to step in eventually. And so I'm kind of at a point where I think the government should kind of have a say in what is violent and what is not. You know what I mean? Sure. Yeah. What do you think, Phil? Where's the line?
There's a line. Well, clearly, I do think it should have been with the social media companies, but like as you said, that they can't be trusted to do that anymore. So, they should have self-regulated themselves, but they didn't. So I think now, pretty soon, the government's going to have to step in and just kind of say, like, okay, here's where the line is, unfortunately. And at that point, they kind of did it to themselves.
Right.
So.
Like, you had a chance.
You had a chance. Movies like self-regulate themselves. Video games self-regulate themselves. Social media didn't do that, and so now they're going to get unwanted government regulation. So.
You know what else needs to be regulated?
The difficulty of a game, Matt?
Wow, how'd you know, Michael? Gosh, so Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is a new game from Software developers that is currently being deemed too hard by a lot of people, specifically gaming journalists. Some people are saying that this extreme difficulty that is a game that's almost impossible to get through kind of actually just completely ruins the experience. So what are our initial thoughts on this?
What's funny about this when I read it is that in like kind of the From Software community, Sekiro is considered the easiest From Software game.
I've heard that as
yes.
well, yeah. It's just the first one that got big, so people are kind of noticing. For
right.
The first time.
I mean, there's different playstyles for all the Soulsborne games, and I guess Sekiro too. But no, it's considered by the community to be the easiest one so far.
Really?
So I found this very funny that people are claiming it's too hard when in fact it's not hard at all.
That's really
if you know how to play the game. It's just like Dark Souls. Dark Souls is considered a very difficult game. but
I played
it's
for
not.
2 hours and never beat anything.
That's
Right.
okay. It's, if
I've
you know how to
never
play the
attempted
game, though, it's not difficult.
Right, no, it's like learning from the encounters.
Right, and like people are like, oh, well, you die too many times. Like, I can't beat this boss. Well, you're supposed to die over and over. That's how you learn how to beat the boss. That's the whole point in these games.
Get good, son.
Yeah, it's interesting
Right.
that you said, Phil, that this was considered the easiest by the community, because a lot of what I've seen in coverage of it, in articles that I've seen, and certain Reddit posts, which of course, one Reddit post doesn't speak for a community,
Right.
but that like this game is like beyond, like it's like much harder than Dark Souls, or so different in how you overcome obstacles.
I've
that
also
it's not
seen that
comparable.
kind of stuff too, and I think it kind of comes from the fact that Sekiro plays very much differently than Dark Souls. So you can't go into it with the same kind of mindset as you do with Dark Souls or even Bloodborne. So like it's a built around one class versus Dark Souls and Bloodborne that's built around other classes.
Right.
So
I have seen a lot of, at least, especially from like journalism coverage, I've seen a lot of people saying that this is beyond the hardest. I've kind of what you said. I've seen a lot of people who are like Bloodborne, Dark Souls fans saying that
Dark Souls 2 is hands down the hardest one.
Yeah, I know.
We're experts.
Super experts. But no, I have seen definitely, again, from a gaming journalism side, that people are saying it is impossibly hard, to the point where a lot of people are returning the game because they're just like, you can't get a real experience out of it. And I genuinely kind of think that it would be, a great example is Suspiria. Suspiria could have been a fantastic movie, original. New one's great, love you. Fucking Charlize Theron. But new one, or the old one could have been a fantastic movie, but the audio is so terrible to hear that it becomes a bad experience. And so this game could be a fantastic game, but it's at such a high skill level that it's a terrible experience, and people are paying for it. I think, kind of more or less, if you are paying for a game and you're paying for an experience, you deserve to be able to experience that experience.
It is really interesting because unlike movies and television shows, when you pay for it, there's no skill involved with watching a movie, and you can't beat or fail.
I disagree. You try to interpret what they're saying in Suspiria, man.
Or in Annihilation, yeah. What the hell happened at the end there?
That was such a bad movie.
Yeah, there's so much to dissect about that. But anyway, so like you can fail in a video game. You can fail at playing a video game, no matter what video game it is, whether it's Sekiro or not. And so that's just fundamentally a different kind of experience or piece of media that you're purchasing. So if you're going into this, most games aren't this hard. Most games, when someone buys it, you can beat it. And I think people have become accustomed to that. But if a developer wants to make a game that not everyone will be able to beat, and you're aware that this is from, and you probably have different opinions about this, but From Software is known for making difficult games.
Yes.
Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and now we have their newest one, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, and at the end of the day, not everyone's going to beat it, and Dark Souls existed fine, and not everyone beat that game, and it's known for its difficulty. So if you're going into a game, it's kind of funny to me to someone's going and say, "Oh, this game is too hard." It's like, isn't that the point of all the games they make?
I mean, at that point, it's kind of on them for not doing their market research. I mean, it's from the same company that's notorious for making difficult games.
Yeah, you spend $60 on a game is going to be super hard, and then you don't beat it, and then you complain about it.
You can't blame the developers for that. Yeah. I mean, you should have known that going in, I feel like.
I think it just goes down to, if you're making a $60 purchase, you should know what you're getting into.
Exactly.
And I think based on their reputation as a company and everything else, if you had done any kind of research, you would know this is going to be a hard game, and And there's
other hard games out there that do just fine, like Donkey Kong Country or Celeste or Hyper Light Drifter. Those are all difficult games. Hyper Light Drifter. But it's all right, buddy. But
I can't play video games. I'm really, really bad at them.
But you sure do love them.
I really do.
They're fun though. But those games do just fine. I don't hear anyone complaining about how difficult Celeste is.
It's because it was from Software.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I actually throw the confetti because Michael, Robb, you sort of changed my opinion there.
Wow.
I know. I was going to say that I think games should kind of be for everyone, but I mean, you did point out it's kind of what the developer wants. I've seen a lot of movies because I like bougie, artsy movies that aren't stupid like Annihilation, but I like a lot of bougie art movies. That I've been with people and it's over and they're like, I just didn't get that. And I've said before, I don't think every movie creator makes movies that appeal to everyone.
Right. So why should the same?
I guess I'm wrong.
Wow.
Is
this the first time on PopTab?
I've never been wrong until now, no. So no, I do kind of agree with you. I guess that does come down to the developer. But something else that possibly comes down to the developer is there were some articles that came out where basically people were talking about they modded the game to make it easier so they could beat it. And they were like, I'm down with that. Like, I'm super happy. But a lot of people saying that ruins the experience, it ruins the artist's vision, and that it's wrong. What are your thoughts on that?
See, when it comes to the artist's vision, yes, the artists have a particular vision, and you paid for that vision. And if you are not enjoying that experience, then if you mod the game to make it easier, and then you get more enjoyment out of it personally that way, who is anyone to say that you shouldn't have had the enjoyment you got because it's not what they intended? Like, if you got enjoyment out of it, that's the point of the game. Like, why do we have to bash what people, you can't say your experience was wrong. It's their experience. Yeah. You don't know what they experienced, and if they got a lot of fulfillment out of slowing the game down to 50% speed and then going through and being able to fight and do things that they weren't able to do before, then it may not be what the original vision of the developer was, but at the end of the day, if they had a wonderful experience and had a fulfilling experience and got to go through the whole game and do all that, then who are we to say no, you're not allowed to do that, or it's wrong.
Right, yeah. I mean, once the person buys the game, then it's out of the developer's hands, and so it's up to the consumer how they want to play the game. And if they want to mod it to make it easier for them, and that's how they enjoy it, like Michael said, then that's fine. I mean, I know people took out Mr. X in the newest Resident Evil 2 remake, so I mean, I played with him in it. I think that's fine. If they wanted to take him out, that's completely fine too, because I can understand that.
Yeah, I think even beyond modding, I think games are kind of supposed to be sure, we have our intention on how you play it, but at the end of the day, you're just there to have a good time. Without even mods, I spent most of Breath of the Wild, I wanted to make every recipe in the game, and that was not exactly the intention of the end goal, but I was going for it. I also spent, no joke, 3 hours. I stacked 52 barrels on top of each other. I made a big pyramid out of barrels. Was that the intention of the game player? No, but I had a great time. And so I really think video games a lot of times do come down to personal experience. And if your personal experience is being ruined, I don't think people should have to return the game like we've talked about because they can't play it. I think people should find a way to make the experience work. I will say the only part where I'm a little dubious on is, as we've been discussing, artist vision does kind of come into this. And there's something that does feel just a little scummy to me about being well, forget what the artist wanted me to do, or forget how they wanted this game to be played. I want to make it easier, so I'm going to make it easier.
Well, I think part of that also is, I think video games as a genre, it goes back to movies and television versus games. Games are interactive. You talked about your experience with Breath of the Wild. Probably the intention of the developers of Breath of the Wild was for you to go through the main story and experience that and use those abilities to progress through that main story and experience what they had laid out for you, and which you probably did. But in the midst of that, you stacked 50 barrels on top of each other.
Okay, don't sell me short, 98.
98 barrels on top of each other, and that was a great experience. I think emergent gameplay is a central part of video gaming, and I think developers put things out there and gamers do something with it that they couldn't have even imagined and that are really cool. I think machinima, Red vs. Blue, is part of that. When they made Halo, they weren't expecting people to make a comedy show out of their game, but they did it anyway. And you stacked 98 barrels on top of each other in Breath of the Wild. So to say you can't do that, and I think that's a big part of what gaming is. So. The vision of the artist is in the game. You can find it if you want to, but if you want, after experiencing that, you can go off and do your own thing. I think that's a huge part of gaming, and kind of was at the core of it.
So just like movies or music or books, people can interpret it a different way. There's probably is a certain way that the artist wants you to see their work, but it's not up to you to see it exactly how they want you to see it. You can see it how you want to.
And like I said, it does feel a bit scummy to me. I do get it, because one of my favorite games ever, Stardew Valley. Love the game. All it needed was a better map function. So I have a mod on there that gives me a better map function that actually shows where people are. And it just improves the game a lot for me. And I'm still kind of following the vision, because I'm still doing stupid farm stuff. But I have a better map. I don't think a lot of times it completely changes the actual dynamic. I do kind of get how you can say if the point of this game was to be super difficult, making it less difficult is infringing on it a bit, but I mean, I can't speak for them, but I doubt the actual intention of the game was just, we want this to be as hard as possible, But I guess it could have been.
And there's other games out there like the original Dark Souls 1 or Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines that both kind of unplayable on PC. So like the fan community had to make mods to make them actually playable. And I don't think that takes away from like what the developers
Any
initially
Bethesda
wanted.
game has to have mods to be playable.
Exactly. So I don't think modding a game takes away from your experience.
Okay. Alrighty, that being said, gang, what are your final thoughts on this or anything else we talked about today?
I think that, you know, with Sekiro, you know, you gotta, you know, like, try your best to get through what they have laid out for you, but at the end of the day, you know, like, it's about what you want to experience, and I don't think that just because you can mod it and, you know, make it what you want it to be, I don't think that means that From Software has to make an easy mode. I don't think it's disrespectful. They're not disrespecting their players by not having that easy option for them, because if they want, tying it back to social media, you know, at the end of the day, it's their stuff, it's their property. So, you know, if they want to make it hard, then it's going to be hard. And if you want to mod it to make it not hard, then that's your prerogative for your experience. But the experience they want you to get, you know, that's what they got.
Yeah, I mean, good luck banning Fortnite. That's going to be like kind of an uphill battle, I feel like. Same with like the whole social media stuff. But in terms of like Sekiro, don't yuck someone else's yum. I mean,
I like that.
That was the most southern thing you've ever said. Anyway.
Most of my family's from the South.
I know
if you can't tell.
You can tell now.
If you're bad at Sekiro, get good. That's unfortunate. Yeah.
I would say Sekiro, like he said, get good. Social media, get better. And Fortnite's kind of just bad. So this has been Pop Tabs. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I've been your host, Matthew Yapp. Joining me today was
Phil Akin
and
Michael Robb.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
I should say that.
We're ready to go.
I'm ready to go.
Phil.